Good morning. Let's start with the most important thing. Rust shouldn't be a problem. Megane 3 is rather solidly protected against corrosion. But be careful. There are voices that this advantage does not necessarily apply to the simpler, fleet generation version. It can be recognized, among other things, by the analog speedometer and traditional ignition switch. The bodywork, however, has a few other problems. The mirrors can creak when folded. Okay, most owners probably won't even notice this because they don't fold the mirrors, and moisture can collect in the indicators located in them, similarly to the ABS module. Although this last comment may only apply to modules that someone has tampered with. Water is also a problem on the windscreen. If the drain gets clogged, the wiper mechanism may be damaged. In addition, typical for relatively modern cars, there are frequent complaints about the quality of the paintwork. It scratches easily, paint chips appear on the bonnet, and small blisters appear on the sills, the latter of which may indicate bodywork interference in the past. Older cars sometimes have cracked windshields, but this is not a common occurrence. There are cars with suspiciously large or uneven gaps in the bumpers. These should be examined with particular care, because the size of these gaps may not be the result of unprofessional post-accident repair, but simply of factory negligence. The passenger compartment in some examples scares passengers with knocks and cracks coming from the dashboard area, although this is an improvement over Megane II. There is basically one quality problem, but it is quite bothersome. The plastic or leather finish of the steering wheel rim wears out quickly. Sometimes after a mileage of around 80,000 kilometers, you have to think about renewing the steering wheel. In addition, there are problems with the electrics, which sometimes take on a life of their own. Typical problems include, of course, failures of the keyless entry system cards, although this can happen due to the fault of the car user, e.g. due to flooding, etc. Fortunately, in the event of a card failure, it can be repaired relatively cheaply or simply replaced with a new one, which outside of an authorized service center will cost no less than around PLN 200 to 250, including programming. There are also offers online that are 2 or 3 times more expensive. To the above list, you should also add comfort module failures, damage to the electrical system, pay attention to the part between the body and the boot lid, and alternator or brake pedal sensor failures. You should take a closer look at the front headlights in the oldest cars. They may have damaged reflectors. Sometimes the installation contacts corrode, which can scare the user with the prospect of bigger problems and expenses. In cars before the second facelift, it is worth checking the condition of the air conditioning condenser. It tends to disintegrate over time. It is worth checking with an authorized service center whether a given Megane has any outstanding service campaigns. There were several of them, and the most important ones concerned, among others, airbags and brake assist. There aren't many bad things going on in the Renault Megane III chassis, but you should pay attention to the front wishbones and the rear beam. The former wear out quickly, and the latter tends to make noise. Overall, the suspension is considered durable by some, while others have a different opinion that it could be a bit better in this respect. However, the former opinions prevail. In the top RS models, it's worth paying attention to the stabilizers and their links, suspension bushes, and the lower kingpins. Their wear can result in the inability to continue driving. Due to the suspension setup, the tires wear out quite quickly in the RS, but this is not a defect, and this type is like that. The following petrol engines were used in the third generation Renault Megane: 1.2 TCE, 115 or 132 HP, 1.4 TCE, 130 HP, 1.6 16V, 101 or 110 HP, 2.0 16V, 140 HP, always with CVT gearbox, 2.0 TCE from 180 to 273 HP, with versions from 250 HP. Cars powered by the 1.2 TCE engine are not worth bothering with, unless they are in really good condition. This is because it is not the successful D4 FT unit known from Clio 3, among others, but the newer and less refined H5 FT, also used in Kadjar or Nissan Qashqai second generation. Its main problem is oil consumption, which may result from cylinder bearing wear, and this in turn results from insufficient oil pump efficiency at higher engine load. Sometimes the oil problem is helped by updating the engine software, but sometimes the engine needs to be overhauled. What's more, the H5 FT engine has a timing chain. To replace it, it may be necessary to remove the engine, or at least these are the recommendations in the service manual. Theoretically, this chain should not require replacement. In practice, it sometimes stretches. It would be tempting to say that the 1.4 TCEH4JT engine is a better choice, but that is not necessarily true. This is also a design based on Nissan solutions, although used only in Renault. Here we have multi-point fuel injection, in 1.2 direct, but also the risk of expensive failures. A typical failure is a cracked head, and generally problems with the head gasket. It is necessary to bear in mind the coolant level. A fairly recommendable option is the naturally aspirated 1.616 VK4M engine, although probably not everyone will agree with this, if only because of the variable valve timing wheel failures. It is recommended to replace it every other timing belt replacement. In addition, there are problems with the throttle valve, often just cleaning it is enough, and with the camshafts, which can seize due to a faulty variable valve timing solenoid. This does not give any symptoms, apart from the check engine light coming on. You can come across information about ignition coil failures, but in practice, they should not keep you awake at night, or at least, not more often than with the competition. The penultimate option is the naturally aspirated 2.0 engine, M4R. Here too, opinions on the sensibility of buying it are divided, and it's not even about faults, but about the fact that the Megane 2.0 16 volts was only offered with a continuously variable transmission. According to many people, such a car does not drive and burns a lot. There are not many typical problems here. Oil consumption may appear, usually due to worn piston rings. Sometimes, a flush and a change of the used oil help. The brightest point in the range of Renault Megane III petrol engines is definitely the 2.0 TCE engine, available in many power versions in the GT and RS models. This is a very popular, very durable, and, in addition, quite susceptible to modifications F4RT unit, well known also from other Renault models. It is probably not an exaggeration to say that it is one of the most successful four-cylinder engines of the last dozen or so years. Potential faults: minor oil leaks, one of the timing rollers may not be required. The French Compact's range includes the following diesel engines: 1.5 DCI, 90, 106 or 110 HP, 1.6 DCI, 130 HP, 1.9 DCI, 130 HP, 2.0 DCI, 150, 160, or 163 HP. All engines except the two weakest 1.5 DCI, according to some sources, only except the 106 HP version, had a particulate filter as standard. Most sources do not include them in the category of particularly problematic elements due to their design with their own injector, although of course it should not be expected that frequent engine shutdown and thus preventing the filter from burning off the soot will serve it well. Properly used filters achieve, according to various sources, from 150 to 300,000 kilometers without interference, while in the event of problems their service washing may help. As for the engines themselves, the most recommended diesel in the range is the 2.0 DCI M9R. It does have a few problems, such as occasional problems with bearings, although this was rather the domain of the most powerful 2.0 DCI versions, unavailable in Megane, relatively rapid wear of the dual-mass flywheel, EGR valve failures, and injection system failures. The latter is quite sensitive to fuel quality, so it is a good idea to change the filter every 30,000 kilometers, but it is still an engine considered the most durable in the Megane III diesel range, as well as a successful. The 1.6 DCI R9M engine was for a long time assessed almost equally favorably. Unfortunately, this has changed relatively recently, as more and more of these units are affected by the problem of a cracked head. It may not be a plague yet, but the enthusiasm of mechanics, journalists and drivers has definitely cooled down. From other problems, mainly the failure of the exhaust gas recirculation valve, as in the 2.0 DCI, occasional turbine failures. The 1.5 K9K and 1.9 DCI F9Q engines are old friends. Both units are recommended conditionally. The larger one is extremely sensitive to the frequency of oil changes. The manufacturer's recommended 30,000 kilometers between changes is a joke. It should be at most half of that. While the smaller one has a lower overall durability than other diesels, and it was only from 2011 that an improved version was sold, which did not scare with problems with bearing wear. Although you can also find information that bearings should not be a problem in any 1.5 DCI in Megane III. The following gearboxes were used in the Renault Megane III. 5-speed manual gearboxes, 6-speed manual gearboxes, CVT, only in naturally aspirated petrol 2.0, EDC double clutch, only in the 1.5 DCI 110 HP diesel engine, 6-speed, hydrokinetic automatic gearboxes, only in the 2.0 DCI 150 HP diesel engine. In regular engine versions, manual gearboxes don't cause any major problems apart from the possible premature wear of the dual-mass flywheel, which I mentioned earlier. The situation is worse in RS models. There are noisy bearings and differentials. CVT and EDC can be expected to start generating costs around 150-200,000 kilometers, although both operate smoothly enough to have their supporters. There are few opinions and information on hydrokinetic on the web. There are hardly any reports of high failure rates, but some report that a special adapter is needed for dynamic oil change. Without it, only static change is possible. It should be noted here that Renault did not recommend changing the oil in gearboxes. Do not listen to them. This is how you can assess the Renault Megane III's failure rate, depending on the version you choose. Failures do happen, but they're usually not very serious, although unfortunately there are exceptions. Compared to the rest of the segment, it's not bad. You can find something reasonable both among petrols and diesels. And this can already be a pretty decent recommendation for Megane. And if you know of any common errors, your comments are welcome.
Kami Pro Website ist Katalog aller Automarken, Motoren, Getriebe, was bricht und bei welchem Kilometerstand. Welche Pakete können Ihre Tasche hart belasten? Dieses und vieles mehr über Autos erfahren Sie auf Kami Pro.